Hi, hello everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Frederick. As you were saying, I'll be talking about emerging markets and how we approach things in South Africa. I'll start off with just looking at some of the challenges we face. It's often very different to what you guys face in more developed countries. Then we'll also zoom out looking at the global trends, which everyone here is very familiar with, and then see how we as a company try to overcome the challenges, but also taking into account what's happening out there globally to kind of come up with a solution that will work in an emerging market like South Africa. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to dig into all the different challenges. In South Africa, the nation's quite uneducated in the whole. There's only 60% of learners actually drop out of school, which is a really large percentage. 78% of people pass matric. There's only 16% of people that actually progress to tertiary education, and of those, there's 50% that actually drop out of undergraduate studies. Of course, the implication for us is we can't have very complex questionnaires. If you want to be speaking to your general population, you have to keep things very simple. So it's got obvious implications for your research design. Then the unemployment rate in South Africa is really high. At the moment, 25% of the labor force is unemployed because they can't find a job. That actually increased to 65% amongst people that's between the ages of 18 and 24 years old. And that's huge, and it's obviously a significant problem in South Africa. Again, if you don't have a work, you don't have a salary, you don't have an income, and for us as a company, it's got particular implications in the way we connect with those people, and I'll address some of those later on. Then in South Africa, because of apartheid, we're in an unfortunate position where there's a huge discrepancy with a lot of really poor people and then a few people that's really rich. So from more like a traditional way of engaging with people with face-to-face type interviews, it's really tricky when you go into the really poor suburbs. It's like who actually wants to interview there because the safety is really bad. A lot of people stay in townships or what we call shanty towns. On the other side of the coin, you've got people that's really rich. They live in gated communities. Some of them even got little guards in front of their house. Who's actually going to let you in to do an interview there? Then in South Africa, we also call it the Rainbow Nation because it's a multicultural land. There's many different cultures in the country. We're also faced with having 11 different official languages in South Africa, and English is kind of the second language for most. So that's also got very definite implications for research design, looking how you're going to approach your questionnaire design in particular, which I'll talk about a bit later. Then at the moment in South Africa, the bulk of the research is done via face-to-face. There's some challenges with face-to-face interviewing. You can't always reach, especially people that's situated in more the rural areas. It's really costly to get to access them. Then mobile, doesn't really show up very well. Mobile research is quite limited at the moment because of the lack of lists available, at least legally. So unless your client provides you with a list of cell phone numbers, you actually just don't have access to numbers unless you've started building up a database. Things like online data collection, also when you phone in your CATI centers to landlines, it's tricky. It's very skewed samples because there's a very, only the kind of the upper income levels that's got access to internet, and landline penetration is on the decline, which you'll see in the next slide. So the communication infrastructure in South Africa is something to consider. Obviously, like overseas, your cell phone penetration is really high. Almost everyone's got a cell phone. Online, there's only about 27% of people that's actually accessed the internet in the past 4 weeks. This is very low, and that's typical of an emerging market. Then the landline penetration, as I was saying earlier, is on the decline at the moment, with only 12% of people having landlines in their homes. So South Africa, even though we've got this, even though most people have a cell phone, we're very much feature phone driven. So 83% of cell phones are actually feature phones, and that's very different to your global players. So now globally, everyone's kind of gearing up to engage with people via smartphones, but that's not the reality for South Africa. In South Africa, we as researchers need to find optimal ways of collecting data via feature phones. So just to zoom out just a little bit, looking globally what's happening, everyone's probably familiar with this grid report. I saw some manuals being handed out yesterday. So globally, the trend is towards online communities for data collection in South Africa. It's not that it's not very relevant for us, but it's also, we have to take into account it's not going to be a national rep sample. Mobile is the second most emerging technology globally, and that's an area that we basically play in. There's many other things like analytics, social media analytics, big data analytics, and you'll see some more mobile things like mobile qualitative, mobile ethnography, and obviously your mind sciences, things like the eye tracking is coming into play. So basically we looked at this, we know where the industry is going globally. We do have our limitations in South Africa, so we try to make the most, and we kind of decided mobile is the place where we want to be in. It connects us with people where it was previously very hard to connect with those people, and it gives them a voice, and we'll be able to engage with them very effectively. Don't know why that's like that. How is mobile technology shaping marketing research in South Africa? So how do we go about it? So basically we make use of social media and mobile technology research, technology to engage with people at the lower end of the economic spectrum. We use a base called Mixit. It's a social media network in South Africa. It's the second largest one in South Africa, with Facebook coming out tops. It's homegrown in South Africa, and it's especially designed to build a platform that's really data light. So obviously, as you know, people in South Africa are very poor, so that's really important. It also works on over 8,000 devices, and it's very relevant for feature phones, although they are obviously working on smartphone applications as well. So Pondering Panda, we are a consumer insights company, and we use mobile. We basically specializing in digital research. Mobile is the biggest component. We also have online panels, but that I won't touch on today. We've done 5.5 million interviews in just over 2 years. So it's a new African record, and we feel we've learned quite a lot from all these interviews. So we feel that mobile research technologies outperform many of the traditional technologies, and also we're able to overcome many of the challenges in market research in emerging markets, and I'll explain now just how. Okay, so as I was saying before, doing research via mobile phones in South Africa really gives you a much better reach into the market. You're able to speak to people it was really difficult to get hold of before. It was really costly maybe to get hold of before. Giving them a voice for the first time. It's a relatively cheaper cost per interview, and we've got the technology available to us to engage with them via feature phones. We've obviously done our homework, made sure that whatever we put out there is really high quality data. We often benchmark ourselves against the industry standards. For example, AMPS is an all products and media survey. It's done every year, and everyone in the industry always kind of benchmark them against those results. And we always come out tops and compare very well. This is just to show that we're very representative of the nation. I said earlier there's 11 different official languages, and so we basically able to talk across that whole spectrum of people. Okay, I don't know what's happened with this thing. It's really interesting. Okay, so something went wrong. Okay, but anyway, short. So basically, we specialize. The speed is one of the big benefits we have as a mobile research company. We do very short interviews. We limit it to 3 to 4 minutes per survey, maximum 10 questions. That's actually quite a lot. We have a really fast turnaround. So we often get clients and need to make really quick decisions. Recently, there was a company that had a competitor brand, very big multinational, launch a product, and it was in direct competition with our client's brand. They needed to find out exactly what marketing activities was happening, and within a couple of days we were able to provide them with an answer, and they could react accordingly. Then in the moment research is something we do really well as a mobile research company, because you're much closer to the interaction with the brand. Another client was really concerned about basically a dip in spending patterns mid-month. So we suggested let's run a survey over a 3-month period. Just every weekend we check, do spending research and see what people are spending their money on. And from that we gain some really valuable insights for them. The other big benefit we have is large samples. Obviously with mobile phones you can collect really much bigger samples than with your face-to-face interviewing, for example. This has obvious benefits from an analytical point of view, so you can really drill down into the data. For example, we recently had a customer, they had a group of, quite a large chunk of customers saying they've got a really bad in-store experience, just don't like going there, and they really needed to understand who those people were. And we basically used predictive analytics or TRADE as a method of predictive analytics to zoom in and identify exactly who those people are that they need to try and fix the experience with. This is a fun example. We often do fun surveys on our platform. We ask how many people, or do you think it's a good idea to start dating someone that's been a friend for a long time? Now in South Africa, the white males think it's a good idea. On the other hand, the females, coloured females aged 18 to 34 think it's not such a great idea. So it's just a head up all the white males in South Africa. If you've got a friend, a coloured friend, a female, it's probably best not to approach her romantically. Okay, there's obviously got much better applications for clients. Okay, I talked earlier about the language issue. So we have 11 different languages, and it's really difficult to actually engage with those people. If you start translating, I think us as a research company decided we're not going to translate into all the different languages, and I know it's a reality for most other clients. They only do it when the other research agencies, they only do it when the client's really persistent about it. But we feel you often lose meaning with the translation and back translation. But what we do is we try to keep things really simple. And we often just try to establish up front in a survey whether people actually understand the concept. So we've done this survey for a client about fracking. I don't know if you guys know what it means, but it's basically a way of extracting natural gas from the ground. A third of people thought it's actually a way of protecting yourself against sunburn, and about a quarter of the sample thought it's a type of sexual activity. So needless to say, we obviously exclude those people from the database, and it's much easier for us to do because we've got such a big sample. We can throw away and discard of that sample and not feel too stressed about it. It didn't cost us anything to do those interviews. So something we're really trying to crack, and we feel like we are getting on top of it, is to engage with respondents at a different level. And we really try to make the user experience good. All our surveys are opt-in. We don't go to people saying, please complete the survey. They find us on our app, on the social media site. There's no financial incentive. We feel quite strongly about it, especially in South Africa where there's many poor people that could very easily be enticed to complete surveys just for the heck of it so they can get that financial reward. But we do want to offer them something, so we think it's really important to make sure the experience is enjoyable. So we try to engage with them at a different level. Okay, just as some of the examples that we do to engage with them, and it's very subtle. We try to have a variety of different types of studies on our platform. So there's fun surveys, there's your client surveys, there's more PR surveys on any newsworthy events that happened in the news. We try to always have a choice of variety. We also keep things very short and sweet. It's not intellectually taxing. We often also provide feedback after a survey so they can go back in and see what other people said. And that's something people are really interested in. So this is just an example of some subtle gamification method we used. We had to find out a lot of really boring information about how often people get sick. Do they go to the doctor? How do people smoke? How often do they smoke? How often do people drink? All sorts of really mundane questions. And we thought, let's just spice it up. And we made it into like this game. We call it Battle of the Sexes. The opening text was, men versus women, who do you think can handle it best when they're sick? Who looks after themselves better? Who gets up to more bad stuff? Please tell us what you think, who's the winner? And the response to this survey was just amazing to see. The drop-off rate was almost none. So people really felt like this is something that's interesting to them, even though the data we got out of it was not something that's necessarily that interesting. So what we found was 64% of people thought women complain a lot more than men. Don't know if I agree. The older you get, the more you drink. think I can vouch for that. Smoking habits, 69% of people don't smoke at all, but of those do, they actually smoke regularly. So this is just like a small example of the output of that survey. And I just want to end off with this little infographic. I did say earlier we often cover newsworthy events. Towards the end of last year, we had the sad loss of Mr. Mandela passing away, and we just kind of wanted to provide that platform for people to give us feedback on how they felt about it, and also just get some opinion on, for example, what were the type of things that they think was his biggest personality traits. Things like bravery came out and perseverance. We also wanted to try get a feel for the sentiment about his death, and a lot of people were actually quite negative, saying things are only going to get worse in South Africa, with only 12% of people said no, it's actually going to get better. But it's just a nice way to then provide feedback to everyone and keeping them entertained. So just to sum up, we're basically a company making use of mobile research and social media to engage with people at the lower economic spectrum of the country. It's very relevant for South Africa as a typical emerging market, and we feel like we are making some headway, and we're able to engage with people efficiently. So that's it from me.